Hi, this is Federica Peterson, host of Shifting the Atmosphere with Federica. And this is my weekly inspirational message, Federica Talks. Now, this message I have kept putting on the back burner for the past couple of weeks because it is a bit of a powerful message, and it's actually been out on my blogs for at least a year. And I've had a couple hundred people that have looked at it. But those that have been introduced to it have found it to be profound. And I understand why. The title of the message in itself is a bit of a shock, but it is true. And I did it for the shock value because I think that there's times when we don't look at things the way that they are. And so versus just talking about this, I'm going to put it out here for you. And I hope that it shifts your atmosphere. So the message today is, would you ever stay in an abusive relationship for money? So that's my question. Would you ever stay in an abusive relationship for money? They are strong words to consider, though the many times I've asked this question, the response almost always leads to interpretation around domestic violence, which is still relevant in perspective. However, I have posed this question mainly in a professional development workshop to people who are mainly in the workforce. So in that context, I want you to consider this question again. Would you ever stay in an abusive relationship for money? As I challenge you to answer this question, let's explore how I was even led to consider initiating such a compelling discussion. One day, as I was reflecting on my journey and all the peaks and valleys I've traveled through to get where I am today, I had a revelation about what had truly been holding me back from birthing my potential all these years. On that day, I realized I had allowed others to define who I was by the titles, limitations, and assumptions they placed on me. I found that not only had I taken on the identity that was so readily imposed upon me for others' convenience, I was also accepting their language toward me, which was often disrespectful and inappropriate. I was allowing myself to do things that were outside of the scope of my personal value system and at times my personal boundaries, but all the while convincing myself this is what you need to do to be fill in the blank, or to have, or to accomplish, or to be accepted. I was blinded by the reality of what was really taking place. I was adapting to the truth of my situation, all the while convincing myself it was normal because everyone around me was contently working and often thriving in this environment. I viewed my discontent as not being able to measure up to some standard. The subliminal message that I heard was if I wasn't able to cope with everything, I was weak, less than, not enough. I accepted this to be true, even though it was not the truth. Why? Because I needed that paycheck. Until one day when I realized I had a choice. No one was holding a gun to my head. The decision to stay was completely up to me. The only choice really was giving up the money, or in other words, the ability to pay my mortgage, car note, etc. You fill in the blank. To live in the way I was accustomed after all these years. Money, the root. I can't blame any of the people around me for what I was enduring. They were doing what was necessary for the definition of for their definition of success. I was the one who had let my boundaries down and compromised my values. People will only do to you what you allow them to. It was a compromise I chose for the money. What it really came down to was that I did not believe in myself enough to make the right choices for me. So what changed? I realized that I either choose me or I may not wake up to see another day. So I started taking steps forward to make the right choices for myself. And as I did that, the things in my life began to change, and the resources and people that I needed to make the transition began to enter my life. As my focus and energy evolved, so did my life. The transformation process is just that. I liken it to the changing of seasons because it literally is. So where are you on your journey? Being held captive in someone else's truth about you, or making choices that honor you? I wouldn't give up any of the experiences that I went through for anything. I learned a great deal about myself and about people in general. It gave me my voice, a loud, booming voice. Sometimes you have to go through some things to shape you into the person you need to be to fulfill your destiny. Every diamond must go through a refining process that can be quite intense, but the end product is what everybody remembers. Perspective is everything. I'm Frederica Peterson, and you're listening to Frederica Talks. Until next time, be well and be blessed.